Hello, seasoners, and welcome back to another installment of My First Season. Today's guest worked for Club Med from 1987 to 1991. Her first season was in Club Med Copper Mountain as a kids club GO. She later became a circus GO in subsequent seasons, and we're going to talk about all that. Fun fact, at the time, in the late 80s, she was only the fourth female circus GO in the history of Club Med. She met her future husband, who was on this podcast at Club Med Punta Cana in 1987. And now we will get her perspective on that meeting. She has a lot of entertaining stories, so I hope you are ready, seasoners. Please help me welcome Lisa J. Pilot Cote. Hey, Lisa, how are you?
Hello, I'm fine. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for being here. I kind of gave up hope on you. I'm not going to lie.
It's about time.
Yeah. I know. I was more than happy when you reached out to me, like ecstatic. I'm still on a high. So thank you for being here because, you know, your husband, Stefan Cote, came on, and, you know, I always extend the invitation to the spouse and the XGO. So I'm so happy that you contacted me.
Yeah, you know, we just came back from the reunion and I realized that, you know, I have a little bit different story than he does, even though we went through a lot of the same things. But so I just figured, yeah, it's time for my perspective.
Yeah, and I dropped a fun fact there in your intro, how you at the time you were the only the fourth female circus GO in the history of Club Med. So I want to get your perspective on that as well. So you know how we do here. So let's just go back as far as I believe you studied at the University of Houston. You wanted to be a PE teacher, is that right?
Yes, I did 2 years at Slippery Rock in Pennsylvania and finished up at the University of Houston with a degree in physical education, minors in health and psychology. I was teaching school in Texas when Club Med came into my purview, I guess you'll say.
Yes, you graduated college in 86. You went to Cancun on vacation. I think there's only 15 hotels maximum at that time.
It
you walked up the beach, saw a party. What happened next?
It was yes. It was a graduation present to myself. A friend and I went to Cancun, the Hotel Flamingo. There was maybe 15 hotels all the way up and down the beach. Still a lot of rustic atmosphere all around. And I walked up the beach and there was this kick butt party going on and music and people, you know, drinks in their hand. I'm like, what is this place? And I don't know, somehow, I don't know if there was a sign or I figured it out later, but I found out it was Club Med. Like, wow, that looks like a place I would enjoy being, because I was also thinking about just working abroad somehow, doing something, whether it was a cruise ship or a hotel. I was ready to see the world, and this opportunity came up.
And here's something you don't hear in 2024. You actually went to the library and got a book about working abroad, right?
So yes, because there was no internet back then, that's exactly what you did. You went to the library, you got a book about places you could go if you wanted to work outside the United States. And each chapter was, you know, a cruise ship, a hotel with a physical address to send your typed resume in a stamped envelope with, you know, real paper. And then you waited for either a phone call or a letter to come back and tell you if they were interested. It was not instantaneous by any means.
Yeah, and this was a address in New York, right? And you were interviewed in Houston?
Yes, they did an interview in Houston. There was maybe only 4 or 5 of us, I think, but I can remember the interview because I was the one that was dressed the most conservatively, like as if I was going for a teaching position or something like that, when everybody else was absolutely in party clothes, if you will.
Yeah. So you didn't get the memo, because I got the memo from an XGO. He said, "Don't wear your suit, Greg," because I was a banker at the time. So you and you remember the person that interviewed you too, right?
Yeah, his name was Jean Morguet.
Okay.
And very kind of pretty French guy for sure.
Now, were you dreaming of the Caribbean, like for your first assignment, or did you have that in your head at all?
No, I didn't know. Other than that hotel, I knew that there were a lot of clubs around. I don't know if there was 8 or 9 of them back then, but that wasn't really what I was focused on. I wanted an aerobics job. I wanted fitness because I was also an aerobics instructor. And he just kept twisting it back to kids. And I would say, and I taught this class and I taught that class. And he would say, okay, well, if you're babysitting a kid and this happened, what would you say to the parents? And he just kept going back over and over again to, like, obviously that's where he wanted to put me for my first season. And so, you know, the interview ended and I didn't think anything of it until until the next step.
Okay, so he kind of steered you towards the
Absolutely.
peak. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So you find yourself at Copper Mountain in the summer. So yeah, you're gonna have to explain this whole Kids World thing to us because at the
So
time, yeah, this was well, not many people today know about it. So if you could let us know what that was.
yeah, so you know what happens all the time anyway is that what used to happen is they would want you to call them. Club Med never called you. Like you would go home, and if you would sit for a week, it was your own fault. You had to call them to find out what was open and what your next assignment was, because that's just how busy they were. So by the time I called them to see where there was a placement, the only thing left that was open was something called Kids of the World. And Kids of the World was Club Med for kids from 8 years old to about 14 years old, where they came and they used the Club Med Copper Mountain Resort in the summer as a way to make money by taking kids literally from around the world. We had kids from everywhere came to this camp and just did killer excursions all over Colorado. And so it functioned like a camp during the day, but at night it was all the same Club Med shows, and that's how you learned a bit more about what Club Med was going to be like, because the day was definitely not the same as in a village.
And one of those excursions would be to the Air Force Academy at Colorado Springs, right?
We went everywhere, as far as Colorado Springs, up in Leadville. Interesting even for adults, you know, the old coal mines and jeeps above tree line, whitewater rafting, Elitch amusement park in Denver. I could go on and on, biking and sailboating and just everything you can think of they did for these kids, including taking them to the mall, because kids from other countries didn't get to go to American malls, and they would have a lot of money and they would go buy Walkmans and things like that and sneakers. And that was an excursion too.
Well, yeah, that must have been great for those kids because they're probably weaned on these American movies from the 80s about the mall, and then seeing it all there must have been pretty exciting, I'd gather, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was a really, they liked that excursion. But again, all the nature excursions were also really, really awesome. Club Med just did an amazing job of packing their days with, you know, we were gone every morning somewhere, every morning.
Yeah, you used to go sailing at Lake Dillon, right?
We went sailing, yes, sailing at Lake Dillon, biking through all the trails.
You had a little boating accident or pinky finger injury.
Yeah, it's pretty when you're working with older boys, it's easy to get hurt. And I remember the sailing geo was, I think, from Spain, and we were at Lake Dillon, and I probably had 10, 12-year-old boys behind me, and I'm pushing them all onto the boat, and they're all sitting there, and the sailing geo says to me, go and unhook that rope. And it was like a figure eight kind of thing, and I knew how to do it. But as I was undoing the rope, the wind took the sailboat and moved it completely in the opposite direction. So the rope went all around my finger and broke my pinky. And the sad thing about that was that I had only done trapeze once, and then I broke my finger and I couldn't do it again. And that made me very sad for the rest of the season. I would watch everybody doing trapeze because, you know, we could do it in our spare time when the kids were done. And I was very sad that I couldn't do any more trapeze.
Okay. And another thing I like is that in 2024, whatever, kids look back and see what people were doing, what kids were doing in the late 80s. So can you explain to me the Alpine slide, these plastic toboggan things?
Yeah, I can't believe the stuff we did and got away with these kids. I mean, the Alpine slide is it's a plastic toboggan with a little break in between your legs, and you're on a concrete track, and they have those things greased up. And we would take the ski lift up and get on this little toboggan and go flying down the hill, racing each other, because there were three. And so another thing that happened to me was I flipped it. I was chasing somebody and I flipped it and landed on my ear, and the stitches at the Vale Infirmary again, you know. So yeah, when you're playing with the big kids, things happen. So
I also like how you told me on overnight camping trips, you would actually scare the kids with ghost stories.
that was yes. So that was we. The Goonies was the movies that was out at that point, and the chief of Mini Club was always talking about that to the kids. But we would ride the ski lift up again to like the middle of the mountain, and they opened the chalet for us, and all the sleeping bags had been brought up in a truck, and where they were just in a pile in the middle of the room. And I don't even remember how we separated the kids. If we separated the kids, everybody just laid on the floor of the resort. And our job was just, they wanted us to scare the crap out of them. And we did. But I mean, when you look back and think about it, I mean, you could never do that anymore. And
No,
telling
no, no.
ghost stories and dressed up like God knows what and dropping dummies from, up above, just anything. And the kids were a pet, they were terrified. And that many Schaefer Mini Club said we did a good job because the kids were scared to death. So, and then in the morning we had to walk down. We walked down the hill. That was
Okay.
what we did in the morning.
Didn't
So
take the Alpine slide down.
no, the Alpine
Okay.
slide was in Breckenridge.
Oh,
So
okay. Sorry. Well, it sounds like you hit the ground running your first season. It sounds like you had a season like you had been doing this all along. Like I don't know if other geos would be shocked to find out you were first season when you were there, but you seem to have like gotten right into the swing of things. Am I wrong? Or were you shy or introvert?
no, I don't think so, not at all, because I think there's a reason that they put you in the group they put you in. There were some shyer, younger girls that were working with the 8 to 10-year-olds because there was probably only 8 of them, 6 or 8 of them, because that's really little to be staying at sleepaway camp. And they were mostly from other countries. Then the middle age group, there was, a certain personality type to work with the kids that are 10, 12. And then I think they picked us loud, strong people to work with the older boys and the older girls because they were pretty rowdy. I think I told you when we were talking before, there were panty raids. I mean, these kids weren't afraid to come in our room and take stuff. And yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
another thing that what happened today. Hey, it was the late 80s, guys. It was a crazy time, okay?
I'm looking and there's a kid wearing my underwear on his head. I mean, you could never do that now. But I mean, it was all in good fun. Like I said, the chief of the mini club, her job was to make sure that everybody, had fun and went home in one piece. And that was about the only rules, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah. In your first season, I think you had a kind of a famous chef de village. It was Merleau was your chief of the
Merleau, the
village, right?
magician,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
What was that like having someone like that your first season?
He was pretty chill, actually. He cared a lot about the shows. So we did cats that I so it was, I learned about, the village life in the evening was very, very similar. We were doing lip sync, we were doing palace night, we did cats, we did some other Michael Jackson songs. So I learned pretty quickly what it was like in the evening. And he cared greatly about the show. And I don't want to say even though it was just kids, but despite the fact that it was just kids, he cared a lot that we were putting out quality entertainment for the kids to watch. And so we had our rehearsals every afternoon and every evening, just like in a regular village. So busy all day with the kids, lunch, get a little break, and then do the show and then practice for something else. So,
Were you hooked after this season? Like, did you want to do another one or did you want to take a break?
well, yeah, I wanted to because I had sold everything because I was going to go work out of the country. So I sold everything in Texas and I went I went home to Pennsylvania, staying at my mom's house. And once again, I'm waiting and don't hear anything. I forgot you have to call. You got to call them. So I called them and I'm like, come on, I want an aerobics job. They keep, whoever was talking to me in New York, whether it was Jackie Amzalog or whoever was saying, there's only 10 of them and it's experienced girls. And we need kids, we need people in the mini club so bad. And you'll get an aerobics turn, we promise. And what we have for you right now, what we can offer you is Punta Cana.
I
I,
see they gave you aerobics, Lisa, but looked like you had 5 other jobs there
well, so
too.
so
Yeah.
they didn't give me aerobics at first. That's what I'm saying. I wanted it and I was begging for it. And they're like, nope, there's only 10 of those and it goes to experienced people. And if you want to, if you go to a village, maybe you can slip in. But right now we need mini club. And so my question to them was, is there a trapeze? Because I had remembered that I had had so much fun that one turn on the trapeze. And now obviously my finger was healed and I wanted to do more.
Well,
I was
excuse me, Lisa. Where did you try the trapeze? At Copper?
at Copper once before I broke my finger.
Okay.
Bobby Bates said, come on up, try it. And I went up and I don't remember a thing. That's typical of people. I went up and I did the whole thing and it was such a rush and I came down and I didn't remember anything about it except it was the most fantastic feeling in the world.
You get to Punta in 87, you do mini club, kids club, boutique, circus, hostess, but also
Yes,
aerobics with Shiva Village, Danny Stabielli. So
yes.
I guess there was a big difference between Nerudu and him, I'm guessing.
Definitely, and the chief of sports was Kenton Smith, and so
Oh,
he's the
really?
person. Yeah, he's the person who gave me the shot at aerobics, and so it would get me out of the mini club. So I loved it. So when the aerobics girl was down or out for whatever reason, I would get assigned to go do either the stretch class or the aerobics class. And I have my little cassette tape because we used cassettes back then. And
Okay.
I love that it would get me out of the mini club. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. But I remember one time I was walking to the mini club and he ran up to me and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, I'm going to work. And he's like, "No, no, you got to be at aerobics." I'm like, "No, I told you I had to work today." And I don't, if people know Kenton Smith, the look he got on his face. And I stopped in the restaurant and I'm, walking to the mini club with the little snack I got. And I see him down there teaching aerobics himself in his perio because he had forgotten to get me out of the mini club at that point.
Okay. Perio and sporting shoes, I'm guessing, right? Okay.
Maybe in his bare
Yeah.
feet because in
Oh,
Punta Cana
okay.
it was on the grass. But yeah,
Okay.
it wasn't as big of a village as it is now, but it was a very busy village. But sometimes the number of kids was down. And they had built a brand new mini club too, a big new mini club area with a new swimming pool and that kind of thing. And we moved everything from the theater mini club to this mini club behind buildings at Punta Cana, which aren't at the end anymore, but they used to be at the end where the mini club was. So it was when there weren't enough kids, there were other things I could do. I liked working in the boutique because I used to design all the windows. Elia was Danny's wife's name, and she would give me free reign to go in those windows and put whatever kind of combination of clothes and jewelry and that kind of thing together that I could. And at Christmas time, I actually made snowmen using like balloons from the mini club. And I went and got flour and water from the kitchen, and I made paper mache and I made big snowmen and did the windows of the boutique. That was fun.
Is this how you met your future husband? Was he walking by the window while you were decorating a snowman? Like, how did do you recall that meet?
Actually, no, the way so obviously being in kids club, we would meet with the circus team once a week to put the kids on the trapeze, first of all, and then also meet with them when we took the kids to circus to practice for the show. So mini club and circus worked hand in hand back then because we did do a show with all the kids. That was a requirement, was that there were two kids shows. So I did two kids shows a week, actually. I did the mini club show, which was getting kids ready to do certain numbers and getting their costumes on and the parents taking pictures of all of that, and then getting them ready to be in the circus show, which was a larger production, maybe with adults and kids as well. So it was quite a big deal. Yeah.
And do you recall? Because every Geo couple interview is different. Like, do you know at the time? Do you not know?
Oh yeah, that was sorry. I forgot that's what you asked me.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we worked closely with the circus team. And then I can remember in my spare time waiting to see how big the line was so that I could go and try it again and do it again and do it again and do it again. And yeah, I mean, he was there, his stuff was there, but so was Chris and so was Dennis and so was Peter. I mean, they were all there. But then eventually, I guess we just started. Oh, I know what happened. A German girl named Gabby one time asked me if I wanted to go to the beach with Stefan, her friend Stefan from the circus. And we went to the beach and we floated on a raft, all three of us together. And that's when I started to notice him a little bit as well. And then started to notice me on the trapeze and then ask me if I wanted to practice with them instead of just taking a turn like a GM, which is a
Okay.
much bigger deal because you get to go stand on the board without the safety lines and maybe take a swing out of lines. And it didn't matter back then who you were. If you wanted to swing without lines, they didn't care. Take a swing without lines. So that's how it started, was we had a common interest. And for me, circus and flying trapeze was something that I was kind of good at, but didn't really know anything about, versus I had just spent 6 years studying volleyball and basketball and track and all your regular sports, and playing kickball with the kids. And this was something completely different, but it was also artistic because I like music and I like to dance. And so it seemed to like just check all the boxes. And so that's why I was interested as well.
Now, are you at this stage, like before you go to back to Copper in '88, are you and Stefan, quote unquote, in couple? One
We
of my favorite
were. So
terms.
yes, we did end up in couple, and which was kind of a problem back then when we were eating with the GMs, two per table, two people and six GMs. So Danny never wanted anyone to sit together because he didn't want you to pay attention to each other. So, I mean, weeks would go by and none of the GMs would ever know that he and I went back to the same room at night. We went to the disco, went home at different times, and obviously he danced with people, I danced with people, and that was how it was. Nobody knew. It was like dirty dancing almost. Nobody knew if you were doing anything outside
Yeah,
of your job, you
that's
know.
right.
So
So Copper with Joel DeWitt, Chief of
so
Village.
yeah, so then what happened was we talked a little bit about the circus culture back then being
It was mostly males, right?
it was mostly males, and it was believed that only guys could do it. That it was very physically demanding, especially the catching. And so it just didn't make any sense, especially because the teams back then, like now there's 5, 6, 7 of them. The teams back then were 3 or 4, and there were 3 villages, and the guys just did a rotation around. And I mean, you could always find a girl in the village to do whatever you needed a girl to do, so they didn't really ever think about it. But I really wanted to do it. I was strong. I knew I could. And so in order for me to be a circus GO and be able to travel with Stefan, because obviously even if you're in couple, you never get the same village unless there's some miracle when you finally change villages. The way for me to stay with him was to become a circus GO and for him to take me and his team. And the only way they could do that is if I went and worked with Bob for a whole summer and learned what to do.
Bob
And so
Christians, right?
Bob Christian. So Steph and I agreed to separate for the summer. And he went to Eleuthera, back to Eleuthera. And I packed my bags once again, going to Kids of the World in the summer, going to Colorado instead of a beach,
Back to scare some kids. Okay.
Yeah, except I was, yeah.
And
So being in the circus was a little different. But
yeah,
we still
well,
participated in a lot, the shows at night, and still did a lot of things with the kids. But yeah, my main job was circus at that point. So
yeah, let's take a second just to shout out the 3 female circus GOs before you, because I believe you remember their names. So would you like to mention who they
yes,
were?
well, Roxanne Bates, obviously, she was with Bobby, so I think she was probably number 1. Then there was a girl named Marla, and her last name escapes me.
Not Maples, right? We
Not
discovered.
Maples, and
Okay.
Ann Bowman. Ann Bowman was maybe a water sports GO who became a circus GO, and they were can I say badass? They were
Yes, sure.
from what I heard,
Yeah,
some pretty badass girls,
they'd have to be back then in
Yeah,
the '80s, right? Yeah.
yeah. And then after that, more came after me more and more because it was realized that it could be done. And it's good to have a girl on the team. It's good to have a girl flying in the show. It's good to have, a female for a lot of things, especially acts. Nobody wants to watch guys for a whole show. So there became a lot more girls after me. But back then it was believed that girls could never catch, which now that's totally been disproven. Girls catch all the time. And even that pulling lines was difficult for girls, for females. But and I probably only weighed about 125 pounds, but Stefan taught me, because what he said was, if you're going to be with me and you're going to go with Bob and all that, we're going to have to learn to use your body weight and jump and pull and just be the people we're like puppets. It wasn't brute strength. It was a lot of coordination for me to learn how to pull safety lines because I didn't have the weight behind me to stop somebody. I had to know if they were heading for danger, I had to jump and climb the rope so that I could keep them off the net. But learned it from Bob, learned it from Steph, learned it from Peter. Everybody was really helpful teaching me what to do. And I think I just got stronger and stronger as the summer went on. And it turns out in the fall, I was, completely ready to go. All baked, all cooked, could work the lines, could work the board, and was able to rejoin Steph. So
Where did you
I
rejoin
made
him?
it. I rejoined him in Eleuthera, but only for a few weeks.
Okay.
And then he left, and then I was there with other people in the circus. So yeah.
Yeah, you were in Eleuthera in '88 with Ye,
Mhm.
chief of village
With
Ye.
yes, it was the very yeah, and it was the tail end, I guess, because I came out of Copper in August because I was just looking at those some pictures that we had of shows that we had done in the village in Copper Mountain, and so I would imagine I was only in Eleuthera September, October, and Steph left probably a week, 2 weeks after, 3 weeks after I got there. I stayed and worked with Dennis, and well, I wrote the names down of the other people that I worked with, but I don't see them right now. And he went on to Eleuthera to prepare our room in Eleuthera, and I went home and turned around in maybe a week and went to St. Lucia from Eleuthera. But Eleuthera was also a good, it was kind of, like I said, it was the end of the season. It was laid back. It was a good place to ease into being a circus GO and also on my own without anybody who had recently supervised me. So I got to see if my training was good, and it was. I did fine. So,
Yeah, so you get to St. Lucia for the winter season, '88, '89 with Christian Maillet and Piero Ruffaldi.
so
And
Christian was the chef de village the first season, and Pierrot was the chef de village the second season. We stayed a whole year in St. Lucia. So the first season was our first, Steph and I, our first adult village. We had never been in a village without kids.
yeah, it
So
sounds strange to hear St. Lucia described as an adult village because by the mid '90s it was a family village, but when you were there it was still adult, right?
well, so we did the changeover.
Yes.
So for the last, we were there for the last adult season, and what we did at that point was we trained a lot of GOs to do the acts in the shows, and then over the winter and into the spring, they were building the mini club and on the other side of the hotel in this grass that had burrs and bugs and you name it. It was the most miserable mini club experience. And that's where they wanted us to put the circus. So we had the trapeze on one side of the village and we had another frame over there. And again, the kids trying to make the kids run and they're getting stickers in their feet. And it wasn't, it wasn't an ideal situation. I think eventually they paved it and made it a lot more comfortable for the kids. But for us, they stuck up a wooden building and made us put all that circus stuff out in the sun. And that's where we did circus in the morning, unless we were in the theater.
It's
So
not,
so
yeah. So yeah, I was gonna say it's not many GOs that actually, when you do a year in a village, that you get to see it switch from adult to family. Was it remarkably different?
absolutely. It was absolutely different. And I would say that the partying slowed down for sure in the evenings. I mean, it was crazy. This is the first season that I was there. We would never make it home very early
Okay.
because
Okay.
everything was all together. The show was in the courtyard outside the balcony of the restaurant and around the pool is where they did the show, or they did it right in the theater underneath the restaurant. And then as soon as you opened those doors, the nightclub doors were open. So, and they were right across, like under a couple of pillars. So it was pretty easy to go from one to the other. And there was no interlude where people could wander off and get lost or go to bed. So it just stayed very lively, very, very lively that first season. And
I'm
then,
s-
yeah, the second season got a little, a little quieter for sure.
yeah, I'm supposed to ask you about the horse net story. Now I haven't heard this, listeners, yet, so okay. I'm hoping it's
Oh,
appropriate.
all right.
Okay.
First time I'm chief of circus, right?
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah. So he leaves and typical Geo night going on. We're all, at the nightclub and having a few drinks, whatever. And then I'm alone in my room because Steph is in Martinique and there's a knock on the door, kind of like around dawn, I would say, 5:30-ish, like knock, knock, knock. I'm like, what? Lisa, yes. We need you. Why? There's a horse in the net. And I remember it was Brian from horseback riding is the one who came and got me. And I yelled out, I'm like, there's can't be a horse in the net. They can't even climb the ladder. And they pound harder and they're like, no, 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 really, you got to come. You're the only one who's going to know what to do. You're the chief. You're in charge. So I jump up, throw on a pair of shorts. Again, we used Jeeps back then because the Geo rooms were far. So a bike or a Jeep. And so they had got me in a Jeep. And we drove the Jeep back to the circus area. And what do I see? But it was more like a huge pony, very large pony had what back then we used to take the spreaders down and we would
Okay,
hang the
excuse me, Lisa. Yeah,
yeah,
just 1 second, because I want to know about this horse. So I know St. Lucia famously has wild horses. So was this a Club Med horse or a wild horse?
it was a wild horse. It was a
Okay, got
wild
it.
horse. There were cows. There were cows everywhere too,
Okay,
and cow patties everywhere in the village.
okay.
And people used to go cow tipping after the nightclub.
No
But so
way. Are you
yes,
serious?
so yes.
Okay.
So this horse had, we used to hang the spreaders on the net. And so they were looped, they just hung in loops until it was time to rehook the net and tighten it up. And so this horse had walked into maybe 4 or 5 of the loops before he realized what had happened, and then panicked and then hog-tied himself and was laying on the ground, pulling the net in a very, very strange manner, strange angle, whinnying, defecating, just scared poopless, right? The horse. And so the next thing I know, I look around and I see a guy from the kitchen coming with a huge butcher knife, like he's going to
Oh boy.
cut the net. And
Lisa,
I'm like,
this,
no,
okay.
no, no, you can't cut. Steph leaves the village and I'm in charge and we're going to cut the net, So I said,
Okay, wait, Lisa. Sorry. Okay, when you said the butcher was coming with the butcher knife, my mind went to a dark place. So he was trying to help cut the net, right?
he wanted to cut
Okay.
the net, and I
Okay.
would be damned if I was going to let somebody, because we couldn't get equipment back those days. They came in containers.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
it's not like, someone was going to throw another net or even a spool of rope into an airplane or anything. We would have to wait. So I was not about to let that happen. So I held him off. And because it was Brian horseback, he kind of helped me hold the horse down. And one at a time, I had to undo the loops off of this horse. And finally, when I got rid of the last loop, he stood up and he decided to run, and he made a beeline and did not see the tight wire, which was about 5 yards from the trapeze. And he clotheslined
Jeez.
himself on the tight wire, fell backwards on his back again, legs in the air, and then jumped up and galloped away. And that's the horse in the net story.
Okay, so
But
you happen to
of
land on
all
the
things to
dumb.
happen while Steph is gone,
Okay, yeah, but
is that,
well, I have 2 things. You met the dumbest horse in all of St. Lucia, and
yes,
secondly, I think you handled yourself well, because I probably would have said, yeah, cut the net, but you had the presence of mind to know that that net was precious too, right? So
yes,
hats
yes.
off to you for quick thinking like that.
Yes, because also the other thing that happened in St. Lucia was that during the fireworks, they were pretty close to the circus and they caught our crash pad on fire. So I remember that happening. Like we looked at the circus and it was smoking after the show, after the fireworks show, and we ran over, and one of them, it landed like a meteor right in the middle of the crash pad and burned right through it. And again, you have to wait for things to come on the container. So we had to call Bob and say, we don't have a crash pad. And so we couldn't do mini trampoline, couldn't do a few other things until the crash pad came on the next container.
The crash pad is that thick one, right?
The big red one. Yes,
Okay, that's right.
the big red
Okay.
one. And that
Wow.
wasn't cheap. That wasn't cheap to have somebody burn it with the fireworks, for sure.
Yeah.
So that had already happened. So yeah, I mean, when you're there a year, a year is a long time. It used to be a long time in a village. It used to be a very long time in a village.
Yeah.
And it was hot there, very, very hot in St. Lucia, for sure.
Sounds like you had your share of excitement there that season.
We
Wow.
did. And the other thing that we did that we were very proud of was that we took the show I remember Rod Frankel asked the circus team, especially Stefan, what's one thing that you would like to do that you haven't done this season? And we came up with the idea that we would like to go into town, because it was a poor town. It was Viewfort was the name of the little town. And we wanted to take the circus into Viewfort for the people in the village. So that's what we did. Somebody got us a big bus, and we even took a horse, because we had a vaulting act. Steph and I were doing a vaulting act with a horse. So we had the horse, we had the bike, we had some aerial, we had the mini trampoline. It got dark, so we were performing in we had some headlights there for us to finish the show, but we went and took the show to the village.
Please
And
say
so all
this.
the chief.
Sorry, Lisa. Please say this wasn't the horse that clotheslined himself that you took.
No,
Okay.
this was a very, very, very nice horse that Lisa Tanzer had approached us and said, you know, I know this act that you guys might want to try, and I have this horse with a very good personality and a big broad back, and you could learn to stand on her and roll over on her and lay on her and do all this. And Steph and I were like, we're there, absolutely. So she would lunge this horse, and the horse had a saddle with a bunch of different loops all around on it, you know, and you could get on the horse and go all, you could go actually all the way under her and back around if you knew how. We never made it that far, but we did make it to the point where I would sit on his shoulders and hold a flag and the horse would be going, and Steph stood up on it. I did a couple of other tricks. One time the horse wasn't ready for the flag, and when I picked up the flag, Steph squeezed my legs because I was hooking them under his armpits, and the horse stopped, and I went forward over the horse and Stefan. He had my shoes in his armpits, and I was on the ground.
Okay.
It was rough to learn. You know,
Yeah.
we wore padding and jeans but that was, I don't think it's ever been done again in Club Med for sure.
Yep. Do you have a photo of that at all?
Oh, we have video. I do not, because I just
Oh,
looked at
darn.
everything. We
Okay.
have, but I can get you a still off the video,
Okay.
maybe.
You mentioned Rod Frankel. Was he the chief of sports there?
No, Rod Frankel was the interim chef de village in between Christian Mailly and Pierrot.
Okay.
He was there for a long time though. Interim meaning, like, I mean, honestly, like 2 or 3 months he was there. That's how long in between chef de village, and he became, I would say, pretty good friend. You know, spent a lot of time. Arrivals and departures in St. Lucia were right in the front there, and everybody was always together for those. And the offices were right there as well. So yes, Rod
So
Frankel was there.
You finish out St. Lucia as a family village, but then you jump right back into the singles village of them all, Playa Blanca, 89
Playa Blanca,
with
the
another
best.
Montrealer, Pierre Letellier Gagnon, right?
Yes.
First Canadian chief of village.
First Canadian chief of village. If you don't mind, though, I would like to go back and just
Oh
mention
yeah, sure, of
a
course.
few people that we met in St. Lucia
Yes,
that have
yes.
been friends since then. Kathy Bailey, who, you know, as chief of Petite Club, was with the club for many, many, many years. Terry Drummy, who he was there. Linda Taylor was a good friend of mine. Lee Siegel was there. All these people were. Kevin Batt was the chief of sports. Robin Brogdon was there. So there were quite a lot of people that we ran into again in our lives, and also have just stayed friends forever. So that was it was a good season for that, a good season for coming away with friends. But again, you're there for a year, and people are coming and going, and so, you know, whoever's left is always pretty good friends. So
Did any of them follow you over? You and Steph?
yes,
Playa
so
Blanca?
we ended up Linda again and Robin Brogdon again. So they were there with us, and you know, Peter and Bob were in and out. Obviously, Kathy Bailey might have shown up, but still as a GM, not as Petit Club GO yet. So yes, a few people did, and there were also some families with teenagers that we had met in St. Lucia that came and followed us. So there was like a GO groupie kind of, you know, couple of families that would bring their kids everywhere that you went, and you would see them. So you'd see them every 6 months, and they would get better and better at circus, obviously. Also, that's where I met Batman, which other people probably know as Mark Octave, who now lives in Brazil. He was from the island of St. Lucia. So there were quite a lot of people that are still mentioned around Club Med who came out of St. Lucia and then Playa Blanca. And Playa Blanca was so many people's best season. There is still, when there's a reunion and they count how many people are from each village and what year, Playa Blanca, is it 89, right? 89, 90?
Yes.
It usually has the highest number of people from any village in any season at these reunions. And just 2 months ago, Steph and Scott DePalma was there. And so the whole circus team from that season was once again in Cancun.
Yeah, in May of 2024, you had the reunion with Angie Boucher, Lisa Fong, and everyone, right?
Yes, yes. And we stopped up for the day and yeah, had Ross Friedman down to the house, and it was a nice reunion, very nice reunion. And yeah, a
So,
lot of people from Playa.
and was Pierre there? Your chief of village from Playa?
Yeah. Oh, you mean at the
Pierre,
no,
at the reunion. Yeah, because I
not at the
know that.
reunion.
Okay, but I guess him and Steph must have got on like a house on fire. Two Montreal boys.
He was a very, very personable chef de village, and so was his wife. To the point where I think you also had asked me if I there were any GMs that came that left a mark on us, and I told you that we're still good friends with a publicist from LA. He
Yes.
also got to be good friends with Pierre and Nadia, and so I was just looking at pictures where there was a heck of a party in the house of the chef de village, and it was mostly GOs, but there were a couple of GMs as well. And we had craft dinner. That was what we were having because nobody had craft dinner when you're in a village for 6 months. So somebody managed to bring a few
Wait, wait, wait. Excuse me,
Yeah,
Lisa. Are you saying that? Okay, because I have a hatred of craft dinner. Are you saying someone missed it so much that you guys had to have craft dinner?
I'm
Like you?
saying that, yes, especially the
Oh,
Montreal guys. It's
oh
so
God.
somebody
Okay.
had brought like six boxes of macaroni and cheese,
Oh
and that
no.
was the main meal at the
Oh,
Chef de Village house. I think a couple other delicacies from Quebec, maybe I don't remember what they were, but
yeah.
it
Hopefully,
was all about
Potin
eating
showed
food,
up. Okay.
eating food from back home.
Okay.
And so craft dinner was the star of the dinner party at
God.
that time.
It's the only
But
time you'll
that
hear that
village
sentence.
was also probably the best everybody has this feeling, but the best sports team ever. Hansel Moss was in charge. The Jensen brothers were there.
That's right.
Hammer was there. It was
Well, you
just
guys put on a big wrestling match with all these guys, and you were Sheena, Queen of the Jungle, right? Because I seen photos of this massive ring that you guys built in the in the middle of the
yes,
dance floor there.
we built a ring. People were building it back behind the theater, which nobody ever really went back behind the theater in Playa. That there was a palapa back there for I don't remember what reason, maybe yoga or something, but we built it back there and it looked very realistic. It was high up off the ground. We had like a turnbuckle to make all the ropes tight, and there was a big Club Med logo in the middle. And I guess it was Hansel and Hammer were the ones who did most of the writing for the hour-long skit. And it was back when there
You
was
had
a lot of
Hulk Hogan
famous
and all these
Hulk
guys, right?
Hogan,
Yeah,
George the Animal Steel, yeah, all of these
that's
people,
right.
Jesse the Body Ventura, and that kind of thing. So most of the sports team guys, they had an assignment, and they did 2-on-2. I remember that, and I remember that they rigged up a table to fall apart when they threw somebody over the ropes, which is they were actually doing. And come to find out, it probably would have been better to not make it come apart so easily, because when they threw, maybe it was De Palma, I think, over the ropes and he landed on the table, he landed pretty hard on the ground.
Okay,
Um,
yeah. And who says wrestling is fake, right? It's not fake, guys. People get
but
hurt.
it wasn't easy.
I know.
Rehearsing a fight is not easy.
Well,
And what
who were you paired off with, Lisa?
so I was paired off with another horseback riding girl. Her name was Amy. And so they called her Calamity Jane.
Okay.
So her act wasn't as much of a stretch as my Sheena Queen of the Jungle was. So she had her own cowgirl hat and a little skirt and that kind of thing. And I was supposed to beat her up. And so I actually did an airplane spin with her. We have a picture of that, which I will give to you to use. I grabbed her by the legs and pulled her legs up. Oh my God, like almost up to my ears. So she was almost bent in half. And then another thing I was supposed to do that didn't work out was I was supposed to climb up on the ropes because the ropes were part of the choreography, right? Climb up on the ropes, jump up. She was supposed to come underneath me. And then I would wrap my legs around her backwards and we would both do a backward somersault. Right there. This was in the choreography, a backward somersault holding on to her and end up that I would pin her. That was supposed to be the finale. But things happen, things happen and it didn't work out like it was. And I was up on the ropes and I jumped up and I kicked my legs and she didn't come. And I couldn't figure out where she was. So I jumped up again and I kicked my legs and she didn't come underneath. And so by this time, I think it was Hammer and Hansel were doing the announcing. They didn't know what to say because it was supposed to be the finale. And so they were like, oh, it looks like Sheeta, Queen of the Jungle, has a new mule kick kind of move going on here. Because they just had to make it up because it did not turn out at all. But nobody, the audience didn't know. So however we made it work at the end, it was fine. And we were sore doing that too. It wasn't as bad as learning to ride the horse, but it was another pretty rough experience. Yeah.
And tell me, if you can, tell me quickly about the story how the trapeze fell down.
Okay, so we're in Playa. The trapeze is in front, and we do our show every week. And I was counting the number of GMs in the shows in Playa. There was usually 18 on any given week. We had 18 people doing a catch and sometimes a return. So we were doing our regular show. We had our big VHS camera going. Somebody was holding it, probably Ross Friedman. In fact, I'm pretty sure it was Ross Friedman. We did a show with 18 people. Steph rolled off the net. We heard a loud crack, and the upright from the pedestal went to the side, and the whole side of the trapeze was hanging limp. And everybody looked up, and it was dead quiet. And Steph yelled, "Announce the flyers, Dave," meaning Dave the Wave. And so Dave announced the flyers. We turned the music back on. We posed for pictures in front of the broken trapeze. We got the guests out of there as soon as we could. And then the sports team was there to help. Obviously, Hansel got everybody there. And as we were taking the trapeze down, another piece of it broke because of the force on it from the first time it was hanging. And the pedestal went swinging and knocked out Steph and knocked out somebody else, a guy from traffic. So there were two people laying on the ground, knocked out, the pedestal swinging, and Pierre Gagnon swearing, in French.
Quebecois, yeah.
Yes. And so the trapeze was really, really broken. And what had happened was that at that point they were using threaded eye bolts as part of the structure. And so that weakens the eye bolt, and it's not done that way anymore. They realized that if you're going to use eye bolts, they only have to have a thread on the end because you need the integrity. You need it to be intact where the force is, where the upright comes in contact with the crane bar. You can't have a threaded bolt there. And so that's what happened. Bob came down to fix it. Bob came down to help us fix it. I remember that too. I remember because when he comes down, he wants to fly in the show. Always, he wants to fly. And you never know what he's going to do. And he always wants to do the passing leap. Even if he doesn't know you from anybody, he wants to do the passing leap. So I remember that we ended up doing all of that. He practices 2 or 3 times with you, whether you have it or not, you do it in the show. And we missed it in the show and we did it again. I remember that. We missed the first passing leap because he likes to do a forward over where he rolls over you when you're doing the legs catch. And so he knocked me down the first time, but the second time we got it. He came back and we went back up on the board. And so in the end, the trapeze was back up and it was a success, but you never know when Bob comes. Yeah. How you're going to end up flying. So.
From 87 till 1990, you've stayed in the North America zone. So your next season, you actually get to leave the zone and go to pretty big village, Metaponto, for summer of 1990 with Chief of Village Eric Georges. And I've worked at this village briefly, so I know how massive it is. So were you prepared for what you saw, like when you got there?
No, not really. And we were told, okay, this is a big deal. This is an honor. They're going to put the first kids circus in Club Med, and you guys are going to go do it, and blah 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 blah. Build it up. So we went over probably April. I guess we flew over to Italy, and you spend some time in Paris, and then I think we spent a night in Italy. But the strangest airlines, you go on the strangest airlines when you're in Europe at Club Med. So I don't remember which airlines we flew on to get there, but it's pretty far south. It's in the boot. It's in like the Arch of the Boot in Italy. And yes, you've been there, and so it's 1,200 GMs maybe.
Yeah.
Very spread out, family rooms, a train that would almost like the Disney tram that would get people from their rooms and take them to the main part of the village. And also that the train also functioned, take people to the beach because it wasn't even really on the beach. It was about what would you say? Would you say it was a half a mile from the beach?
Yeah, yeah. It like I said, if not for that train, I don't think anyone would have went anywhere. Like
No, yeah, you had to climb on the train to
nightclub.
go to the
Yeah,
beach.
yeah. I'm not going to the nightclub. No, there's no train.
Yeah, and then it stopped running, and yeah, and you had to all at
Yeah.
night. Yeah, huge village, more kids than we'd ever seen in our life, all like speaking all languages. So Steph might have told that story because you could have a German kid, an Italian kid that speaks Spanish, and a kid that speaks French. And you have them all in the bike act. Now, somebody else might have said, I'm not doing this, but not us. We're out to prove that, circus can work in the European zone. So we learn the commands in all four languages. And he says sometimes he doesn't, once they learn the word hop too, if they learn the word hop, you might not need to prompt them before that for them to all do the move at the same time. But it's very possible that we would be speaking more than one language when we were teaching acts or actually putting the acts on in the shows down in the theater. So many kids, hundreds of kids, hundreds. I just counted in a picture 20 tiny tumbling tots, which is just the little kids in the tutus that do some forward rolls, and probably 15 lions and tigers. So right there, you're at 35. And then there was another, looking at the picture, another 10 balancing. And it just went on like that. And I don't know what we would have done without that mini club. And Day Day was the chef de mini club. And I can remember that we had trunks of costumes, but it still wasn't enough for all these kids. But I remember not having to worry, like in all the other villages, it was me getting everybody dressed and making sure everybody looked okay. And I can remember that we were so busy moving equipment. By the end, it started out with 3 of us, and then there was 4, and then there was 5, because that's just what we kept pulling from other services, because that's what was needed to handle all of the kids. So we were so busy moving equipment and getting things ready that I never had to think about when the next kids come out, how are they going to look? I knew they were going to look good, and that the mini club team had them ready to go. We could have never done it without them.
So
300
good.
kids, a
Yeah,
lot of kids.
good thing it was a summer and you weren't there a year, right?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
tiring but challenging to figure out what to do with all these kids and give them all. It has to be meaningful. You don't want any kid to think they were just like an also ran or anything like that. So even if it's the mini tramp, you got to tell them they're the best clown that ever was, and that's what it was about. And the parents also, they want to see their kid have a meaningful part. And but we did it all. We did the double trapeze and this swinging trapeze and Spanish web, and sometimes Spanish web was in German, sometimes it was in French, just depending on, what little girl showed up that week. And so we kept all those solos, but then we also, every act that we could have 30 kids in, we did. I don't know how we did it when I look back.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Right. How did we do that?
How did we? Like I said, with the help of the mini club GOs and just being super organized and having the sports team clear everything away for us. And again, using the train to take everything back to the circus and unload it. That's how we made it. That's how we made it through. And I think I told you that village, like before it opened and when it closed, there was no food. There was bread and wine. And it was cold. We were cold. We were cold. We were cold when we got there, and we were cold when we left, because it was also one of those places where the bathroom has an open window that doesn't have any glass on it, like for ventilation. And so even though the rooms were beautiful, I can remember that the cold air would be coming in when we were trying to take a shower, and that was really uncomfortable. And so it was definitely only a summer village, because the weather changed very, very quickly before and after. And after we went to Oktoberfest, oh my God, because we had met so many German GOs, and Oktoberfest was right after. So that was a fun trip that we did after the club.
All right. Your first season was 87 Copper Mount with Miradieu, and it looks like your last season was in Copper with Miradieu, 1991, and your costumier, but you get married this season, right?
I am so I can talk like 1 minute about something that happened
Sure.
outside the club, because it's
Yeah.
important. So
Yeah.
so being like all good GOs, we collected a whole lot of business cards, and we figured out where a whole lot of circuses were, and we spent a few weeks just traveling around Europe, staying at people's homes and going to circuses. And in Germany, we went to a circus and there was a couple doing double trapeze, and we met them after the show, and we stayed and talked with them for hours after the show. And that's when we decided that we would like to maybe try to be professional performers. That's kind of when the seed got planted in our brains that if this couple was doing it, we could do it too. Because before that, we really were, if I'll say, there wasn't anything super professional coming out of there. So to think that we could go and be professionals, we knew we needed a lot of help, but it's something that we decided maybe we were going to take on. But with that decision comes, okay, well, do you want to work in the US or Canada? Well, if we want to work in the US, he has to be able to work. And he can only work if he has a work permit, and it's easier to get a permit if you're married. I mean, it wasn't romantic. It was like, oh, okay. Or Canada, same thing, but there wasn't as much work in Canada. So we ended up deciding that we were going to get married in the States, and we were going to try to work in the States. And the only place to go in the States after spending the summer in Italy was, again, a ski village. So I go back to Copper one more time. So I'm there 2 summers and a winter. And we decided that when I brought him in the country, it's just like 90 Day Fiance. I had 90 days to marry him. So he came in the country in November. We bought a Chevy van and put our circus costumes in it and our ski clothes in it. And we drove across the country to Copper Mountain in a Chevy camper van and made it to Copper, and decided the wedding would be like in January, because that was before the 90 days. And I can remember that Merdu wanted to make it like the show of the night. Like, if you guys want to get married, you can bring your family and we'll have a cake and we'll have dinner. And we just thought, no, we don't really want our wedding to be a show, be a part of the show. And he says, okay, well, then you can go and get married, but you got to come back in the evening and work. So that's what we did. We went and got married in Breckenridge. We took Kevin Klein and Lisa Tanzer with us as our witnesses. We went and got married in Breckenridge. We came back and we did the show that night. And I think maybe they announced it when they announced all the geos at the end of the show. Maybe they said that they just got married. Maybe that was the only acknowledgement that we got. But yeah, so we went to Copper so that I could bring him into the country, so that we could, I knew that there was circus rigging in the theater. And so I knew that we could practice, because the whole thing was planned, right? We're going to go to Copper Mountain. We're going to practice. We're going to try to get a job in the circus. And when we get a job in the circus, we're just going to blow. We're just going to leave Club Med, you know? And so that's kind of sort of what happened in the end. It was still a fun season, because the Geos did a really nice bachelorette party for me. And they grabbed Steph and they took his pants off and shaved his legs in the theater. I remember that's a French Canadian tradition of some sort. I don't know.
It is okay. Well, sure.
I didn't know either, but
I never got that. Okay.
Well, the animator was also French Canadian, and
Okay.
according to him, that's what they do. So while the girls
Okay.
had me somewhere, they were giving me, and you know, Geos don't make any money, but they went together and they bought me a really cute little like lingerie something or other and gave us a gift card. I mean, Geos didn't make any money, especially in a ski village. Everything was so expensive, but somehow it's so nice. And I was looking at the card that everybody signed, and yeah, they made it special in a way, you know. So giving me that little shower and taking him into I have pictures of that, of him without his pants on, and everybody, there's like 5 guys with 5 razors shaving his legs.
I'll have to take a look at that one first before I post
yeah.
it. Okay.
But so that's how we ended up doing the Winter Village. And yeah, I did costumes, and I remember I made a bunch of costumes. And in the end, when we left the village early, and when we were leaving, Fifi was the chief of animation under Merdu. And they came to me and they said, you know, Stefan has to leave, but you don't have to leave. I just got married. You know, they're like, you can stay till the end of the season if you want to join him later. We don't have any beef against you. And I'm like, no, I think I'm going to go with my husband.
Yeah, the guy I just
And
married.
so that was, yeah, it was the means to an end for us, you know, a means to an end. We had given we gave everything to Club Med for so many years, and then they gave us, if it not so easy of a launching pad, but they gave us a place to stay and a place to figure out what the next part of our life was going to be like. And then as soon as we had it figured out, we took off.
Yeah, and also in '93, you did like a little 6 week interim in Huatulco, right? Like,
Yep. So we left and we did flying trapeze with a family for a while. Then we ended up on our own because we figured out a way to make a living just the two of us rather than splitting a salary between five of us. And we had finished a stint at Circus Circus. And by this time we had a house here in Vegas and they needed somebody. Jane Smith called us and she needed somebody in Huatulco. And so I think we got somebody to watch the dog and watch the house and took off for Huatulco for 6 weeks. We met Kelly Roerig was in Copper, and then again she was in Huatulco with us. And it was almost a different breed of GMs or GOs at that point. It was 7 or 8 years later, things had changed a little bit. But I remember we had a killer room in Huatulco with the hammocks, and there the village was so big that you took corridos. Have you ever been?
no, but yeah, I know what you're describing. Yeah, those little kind of like tuk-tuk cars, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, that was also a point when things had changed a little bit for circus geos when they weren't homegrown anymore. I can remember we were there and people weren't as trained in the Club Med way, and there was just a guy that was a diver. So somehow, are you breathing? Can you move in the air a little bit? Yes, I'm a diver. Okay, so you can do flips. Well, go work. Can you go work at the circus? And so I can remember that was a little bit difficult for us accommodating somebody who was not trained exactly the way we were and who was a bit more focused on, which now they're all focused on, their own tricks and their own development as performers. It was the beginning of a different time in Club Med for circus geos for sure.
Okay, Lisa, we're coming to the end of our interview. I just want to make sure that I know you mentioned a lot of people already, but is there anyone that you haven't thanked yet or shouted at?
I don't know. Time flies, right? I mentioned
Yeah.
Kathy Bailey, Stefan Goudreau, still good friends of ours. So happy to see the Jensens always. Peter Gold, Dennis, Gabby, who introduced me to Steph. Scott Cameron was in Punta Cana with me. Trace Henderson, a French Canadian guy named Eric. Kate Ferguson, who's still, I believe, with the club, was with us in Playa Blanca. So, I mean, yeah, my list could go on and on and on. And we still see also the people who were our witnesses in our wedding, Kevin Klein and Lisa Tanzer. So,
Stefan Gaudreau, also from Montreal, married Lily, right? And did you
correct.
guys work together after Club Med at all?
Not together, but we've always done things in tandem. So they had their circus school, and then eventually we had our circus school at the same time, and our kids grew up together. And so we bought and sold equipment, and now my girls go and perform for Lily because Lily still has gigs. So my circus troupe that I just retired from in October, they're still out working. Thank God I trained them right, and so they do get jobs. And so we are still very, very connected to the Goodrow family for sure, circus and
Nice.
otherwise.
And is there anything looking back that you miss about Club Med? Like, is there one thing, two things? Do you ever think about it?
I do. I think about what it was like to have all of your physical needs taken care of so that you could give everything to the cause. You didn't have to worry about where you're going to sleep, where you were going to eat, where you were going to get medical care so that you could give them all the energy that you had. I know for some people, maybe in other sports or other services, it might have been just a means to an end. But for us, we were so in love with what we were doing. And I got to recreate that a little bit when we opened our school here in Las Vegas. We were so in love with what we were doing. And we just thought that our potential was limitless. And so we didn't know what we didn't know. And that's in the end what ended up making us, pretty good at what we were doing because we didn't know what we weren't supposed to be able to do. And we just did it.
That's a great answer because I personally would have said lunch, but yeah, no, that's never
That
heard
is that
anyone put it
also
that way
not
before.
having to cook anything is also a
Yeah,
great thing.
yeah,
Not having
yeah,
to make breakfast.
yeah. Close runner up.
But
or
yeah, no, that's yeah, being able to throw yourself into a job without having to worry about anything else.
yeah, no, no, no one's put it that way before. Like you're the first one to put it that way, and it's true what you're saying. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
So,
Lisa, wow, I really want to thank you
oh
for
my
coming
God, I
on.
keep, yeah,
And one little fun fact, because your full name Lisa J. Pilot Cote, but we
yes.
found out that Steph's great great grandmother, so from Quebec, her name
Her
was
name,
also Pilot, right?
Marie Pilote, which is
What?
very, so my name
Yeah,
is Polish, and we were at some event in Quebec, and we went to the graveyard to look at some tombstones. And believe it or not, he didn't even know it. And she's
it's
buried
true.
right there
What
next to his great grandfather, and her name was Marie Pilote.
well, it's true. What are the odds that a French Canadian Geo meets an American Geo, falls in love, marries, and then
And it
it
works
turns
out.
out,
And
yeah,
33 years, 33
yes,
years in
congrats.
January.
Wow,
Can you
congrats.
imagine? I
Wow.
mean, and again, an unlikely pairing, 5 years age difference, and city boy, country girl, all of the cliches, but we're still here.
I
And
think you might.
a lot of it was a shared passion.
Yes,
A lot of
yes.
it, you know.
I think you might hold the record for ex-Geos married the longest. This is
You think
amazing.
so? Steph
I
and
think
Lily, I think are
so.
at 31. Steph and Lily are
Yeah,
like one or 2 years behind us.
yeah,
Wow, that'd be interesting to find out.
yeah. I know. I
And then
think
if you count the Club Med years, we're talking, so
that's
30,
that's
30,
right.
30, so 33 plus 4, 5, 38, 39 years.
Yeah,
I mean, think of it, longer than Steph's lived in the States longer than he lived in Canada. He's been married longer than I mean, the years go by.
that's right. That's right. It's an incredible story you two have. And
It's
I
been
really
crazy. Yeah.
want to thank you for sharing that with us here today. Thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you. I hope I didn't forget anybody. It's just there's so much went on
Yeah,
in
don't
so
don't don't
in
don't
so
send
little
her angry
time.
emails, guys. Okay, she worked with a lot of people, Lisa. Okay.
I work with a lot of people. I learned from a lot of people. There were so much fun. St. Lucia was so much fun too. Oh my gosh. When I look back at those pictures of us after the nightclub, man.
Yeah, so please, listeners, make sure you go to the My First Season Facebook page and check out the nice photos that Lisa, gave me to post. So please check that out. If you don't know Lisa, if you did work with Lisa, you'll probably find yourself in some of those photos.
Will do my
Well,
best. Thank you.
thank you so much,
Alrighty.
Lisa. Would you like to say goodbye and thank all our listeners?
Goodbye, everyone out there in Club Medland. I hope to meet you somewhere down the road if I don't know you already.
Awesome. That
Thank
was the
you.
one, the only Lisa J. Pilot Cote, and we'll see you all next week on another installment of My First Season. Bye. Say
Thanks,
bye,
Greg.
Lisa.
Bye.